Okay, welcome back folks. We've got ourselves another retro martial arts video game package here. This is probably one of my last videos like this for a while. There aren't really all that many more martial arts retro video games that I want to own, so I think my collection is looking pretty good at the moment. The other reason being that, well, I work really hard on these videos, and where they're being hosted seems to be a little bit restricted. Well, I'm getting constant fake statistics, I'm being blocked from search engines. A lot of the time if you search for any of my videos, they just don't come up. My views are being constantly put back down to zero despite having comments and people literally viewing it. It's just gotten really nasty. It's really hard to find an incentive if my videos are constantly being made invisible. But that crap out of the way, we've got ourselves a package. Let's open it up. What could it be? I know what it is, but then. Alright, let's take a look at what we've got. Tekken 2. And Virtua Fighter 2. Okay, so what have we got? We've got two classics from the 32-bit era age of martial arts video games. What are we talking here? We're talking mid to late 90s, early 2000s. So we've got the legendary Virtua Fighter Part 2. And of course the all-time classic Tekken 2. Now take a look at that folks, yeah. Now this was the beginning of a new generation of martial arts video games. Let's look at these one at a time. Virtua Fighter 2. Now when I was saying mid-90s to late 90s, I think that's when these sorts of games started to get really popular. Now Virtua Fighter 2, from what I understand, what do we got here? The arcade release was actually 94, 95. Now at that time, the people who were into the fighting games were mostly into the 2D fighting games. So you had your Street Fighters and your King of Fighters type games. Now this type of game, a 3D fighting game, was always seen more as a novelty sort of thing. So there weren't a lot of these cabinets around. It had a very specific sort of audience. And little did I know as a 2D fighting game fan that this was the way of the future in terms of martial arts video games and fighters. Now the Virtua Fighter series, very much a groundbreaking name. But they didn't stick around as long as, well, for instance, Namco's Tekken series. We'll get into that in a minute. Let's have a look inside. So we've got ourselves here a Sega Saturn CD. Now this is the way the Japanese discs looked. So you can see a standard CD size. Looks pretty cool. Condition is pretty nice. Like it so far. Sega Saturn being one of the new generation consoles at the time. Sega Saturn and Sony PlayStation. And we know the big success that Sony PlayStation was. And unfortunately the Sega Saturn just wasn't the success that it should have been. So let's take a look inside. Alright. Looking good so far. So this is our CD. Let's take a look at that. Looking very nice. Wow, look at that. Look at that, scratches, none. This is looking pretty good. Like that a lot. Inside we've got some artwork with our moves list, which looks very, very cool. Look at that. With our characters. And let's take a look at our inner sleeve. Put that there. Virtua Fighter 2. Quite beat up, as you can see, but that's cool. As long as it's not torn, it's all good. So here we go. Let's have a look inside here. Nice looking booklet. Oh, okay. Okay, here we go. This is the cool part of the booklet, our characters. So we've got Akira, Hi. Very cool. Oh, that's very nice. Now, Virtua Fighter, though a success, also had a lot of cringe-worthy sort of characters in it. Now, around the time when this came out, fighting games were very much associated with, well, characters like Ryu and Ken, Chun-Li. And most fighting games, their characters were kind of loosely copied. Like, for instance, some of SNK's characters from Art of Fighting and things like that. Now, Virtua Fighter 2 is made up of a lot of characters that are very much inspired from existing fighting game characters, which I think is where the game suffered a little bit, because as soon as people saw, you know, a fellow looking like this, the first thing that you think of is Ryu. And from what I recall in a documentary, the creator said that he was inspired by Ryu. Problem was, because the market was so oversaturated with fighting games at the time, people kind of just rolled their eyes when they saw these characters. Now, very cool characters, nothing against them. So let's take a look at the Virtua Fighter 2 character list, and let's see who we pretty much think they've been inspired by. So we've got Ryu, I don't know, Ken, Guile. This is a combination of Ken and Guile. You know, Chun-Li. You know, we've got a Blue Ninja. At the time, Sub-Zero was very big. The drunken Kung Fu Master character, of course, obviously inspired very much by Jackie Chan's Drunken Master. Who else? Cammy. And this guy always reminded me of Richard Meyer from Fatal Fury for some reason. But enough about that, onto the game itself. So this game has the honour of being one of the first one-on-one 3D fighting games. And it was a great game. It was fun to play. It felt very different to the 2D fighting games of the time, so it was a bit hard for some people to get into. I know it was hard for me to get into. When I eventually did get into it, it was quite fun, and the many sequels that followed, well, they got better and better. Unfortunately, not as big a success as its rival games. Now, from what I recall, the development of this game was quite expensive, and they used a processing chip that was based on a military processing chip. So we're talking dollars here, just in ideas. But like I said, the Virtua Fighter series was one of the first of its kind, and it was groundbreaking. I like that. Great condition. That's going straight into the collection. Now let's have a look at our second piece here. And here we go, folks. Yes, the legendary Tekken 2. Tekken 2 for the Sony PlayStation. That looks cool. Now, something to keep in mind here is that this is the Japanese version of Tekken 2, and it's the Japanese PlayStation. So you'll notice that the CD case is quite different to the usual PlayStation CD case. Cool. Very cool. Now, I did originally own this. This was one of the very few PlayStation 1 games that I actually enjoyed. This was one of the greatest fighting games on the Sony PlayStation 1. So Tekken 2 came out in about, I don't know, 94, 95? I believe 95? It was hot on the heels of Virtua Fighter. Virtua Fighter 2. Now there's no doubt about it that Tekken took a lot of inspiration from the Virtua Fighter games. In fact, the first time that I saw Tekken, I thought it was Virtua Fighter. You know, Namco did a smart sort of move. What they did was they took all the best elements from this game, added a whole bunch of new characters, interesting characters, and well, you got yourself the Tekken series. So from a game that has about 10 characters in it, suddenly you had a game that had about 20 characters. And when people saw that, well, this kind of went, well, you know, bye-byes. Now the gameplay mechanics, again, very different to your 2D fighters of the time, and very similar to Virtua Fighter. Now talking about groundbreaking games, the Tekken series is still going strong to this day. In fact, it's probably the top of the list of martial arts fighting games. So it definitely worked its way up the ranks. And another thing about the Tekken series is that it kept itself fresh. It didn't keep rehashing the same stuff over and over again, and I think that's why it's so successful. The character designs, the gameplay, it's just a winning formula. Alright, let's have a look inside. Okay, there we go, there's our disc, our CD. Now, it's great to see the Japanese disc. Oh, look at that. Is that standard? Wow, okay. So we've got a typical black PlayStation disc here. Not a scratch on it. Beautiful. Look at this. This will keep your disc from getting scratches. I'm not sure if this is a standard staple in Japanese PlayStation games. We definitely didn't get that here. We've got our artwork underneath. It's a bit hard to see now, but that's fine. I'll keep this thing in place. Looking very cool. This is also something that we missed out on with the Australian PlayStation release. We never got this artwork. This is cool. Okay, let's take a look at the booklet. Very thick. Now this was the standard artwork. We got this artwork for the Australian version as well. I thought this was a pretty boring sort of a cover, especially for a game that was so exciting. But it goes to show you can't judge a game by its cover. As usual, the Japanese booklet does not disappoint. Look at this. If I recall, the Australian PlayStation booklet was all in black and white. This one is not. This one is all in colour. Glorious, glorious colour. Yeah, look at this. So they're showing us every page, every character page actually shows us what their two costumes look like, because the characters had two costumes in the game. Very nice, great condition, great booklet. Now the characters were very fresh, even if some were clearly inspired by existing game characters of the time. The CD here itself, with Heihachi on it, that's cool, that's very, very representative of the game. Now for some reason in Australia, this is what our CD looked like. Now I don't know what the marketing idea was behind this. A bunch of the characters from the game wearing hot swimsuits. Now obviously this would have appealed to the male teenage audience of the time. Now I don't know why you had to do this when the game was already a killer classic game. Very happy with this. So we've got two giant monsters, pioneers of the 3D fighting games, the games that were to come. This was the future of martial arts fighting games. In time, other games came out, Soul Calibur or Soul Edge, the Dead or Alive series. There was a Virtua Fighter comic book from what I recall, and obviously Tekken 2 had lots and lots of media. You know, there's 2 animated movies that I can think of, and pretty much 2 live action movies. Although I wouldn't count the second movie being a Tekken film, because it was actually called something else, and they put the Tekken name on this just to sell the film. So there you go folks, 2 historic martial arts video games from the 32-bit era, Virtua Fighter 2 and Tekken 2. Still going strong as a franchise, and one of the biggest martial arts video game franchises alongside things like Street Fighter and the King of Fighters. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Probably one of my last videos like this for a while. Be sure to check out some of my other videos based on retro martial arts video games. It's been fun collecting some of these things and repurchasing some of the old games that I don't have anymore, like this one. And well, until next time,